Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Scenes What's New in Android Accessibility. My name is Maya Ben-Ari. I'm a product manager on Android Accessibility, and with me today are a couple of people from the accessibility team. We're going to show you a couple of new features, a couple of new demos, and a unique look of behind the scene. So this is our agenda for today. We'll give a brief overview about accessibility. We'll talk about what's new in accessibility in Android N. We'll talk about the Gesture Dispatch API and show a couple of very cool demos. Also, we'll look through voice access, a new service, a new accessibility service, and then we'll give a brief look of behind the scene in UX research. So let's start. What is accessibility? Accessibility is about creating products that are usable by everyone, including people with disabilities, such as motor impairment or visual impairment. But I'd like to rephrase this definition as slightly different. And I would say that accessibility is about challenging the assumptions we make about our users. For example, can the user see the device or distinguish between colors? Can he or she touch the device or hear back the sound that the device is producing? And can the user speak back to the device? Now, this is not a small number. 20% of the US population will have some sort of a disability during their lifetime, according to the US Census. But it's not only that. Challenging the assumption can benefit all the users. Why? Because some of the technologies that were developed in the past, such as speech recognition or word prediction, started as technologies for users with accessibility needs. But this is not all. We are all accessibility users sometime. This is called situational disability. When we drive our car, we cannot look at our phone. When we are in a noisy environment, we cannot hear the sounds of the device and we cannot speak back to the device. And when we carry heavy bags from the supermarket, we cannot touch the device. So we want to design an inclusive experience for all users, regardless of what restriction the user might have. Now, let me briefly mention some of accessibility services and features available on the platform today. So first, what is an accessibility service? This is a long-running privilege service that changed the interaction model with the device in one of two ways. One, it can change the way the user interacts with the device, or it can change the way that content is presented to the user. Now, the first accessibility service we have on the device today is TalkBack. TalkBack is targeted for people with vision impairment or blind, and it's basically a screen reader. Now, the user can interact with the device using touch gesture, and content is presented, and content is spoken to the user through text-to-speech. The second accessibility service is BrailleBack. So can we switch to the demo? So BrailleBack is similar to TalkBack, just in this case, the user can interact with something which is called a Braille refreshable display. The user can type through these keys or interact with this joystick, and then the content is presented using Braille in those Braille cells with the dots raising and lowering. The next service is Switch Access. Switch Access is targeted for motor impaired users who have trouble interacting with the touch display. In this case, we have something which is called Adaptive Switch. This Adaptive Switch has two buttons, and the user can configure one button as Next and one button as Select. And using only these two buttons, the user can interact with the device. Note that the switch can be with more or less buttons. Can we switch back to the slides? And the last accessibility service is voice access. In voice access, the user can perform low-level interaction on the device using only his voice. This is a new service that we recently launched, and Patrick and Scott from the accessibility group will soon tell us more about this one. We also have a couple of accessibility features already baked into the platform. For example, large text, magnification gestures, color inversion or color correction for people with light sensitivity or who are colorblind, high contrast text, and caption support. In the next section, we're going to dive into the latest and greatest feature for accessibility in Android, and we had a lot of very exciting things to share with you. The first one is vision setting on the welcome screen. This will enable visual impaired users to independently set up their device. Now, can we switch, please, to the demo? Focus. OK. So this is the main screen, the welcome screen on Android. And here at the bottom, we have vision settings that flashes every 10 seconds. Or 3. Here you go. So if I tap on that, I'm presented a couple of options. I have magnification gesture, font size, display size, talkback. So for example, I can select magnification gesture, and then I can triple tap, and I can increase the size and magnify the UI. Now, another option that I want to highlight is display size. This is a new feature launched in Android N. So if this is the regular screen size, I can increase the size of the overall UI to be bigger. Now, the nice thing about all those settings that whatever settings I'm selecting, it's going to be reflected both through all the welcome screen, but also as the user setting throughout the device. Back to the slides. Another cool feature is mono audio support. This one is intended for people who have a hearing loss in one ear. And this enables them to listen to mono audio stream. And we do that by combining the left and right channel into a single mono audio stream. And we also have a couple of new features in TalkBack, including improved tutorial clarity, improved gesture detection to work better across different devices and hardware. And also, we added a new API for accessibility service to turn themselves off. So if the user accidentally turns on TalkBack on the welcome screen, he can easily turn it off. Now, the next section is about the Gesture Dispatch API. And this is something that I'm personally very excited about it, because now we will allow app developers to build services such as point scanning, face tracker, and eye tracker. So for the next one, I'd like to invite Anna, an engineer on the accessibility team, to demo the APIs.
Thanks, Maya. I'm Anna, and I'll tell you about the new Gesture Dispatch API that lets accessibility services mimic touching the screen. First of all, what's a touch? Well, it has 3 parts: placing a finger on the screen, drawing a path or gesture, and lifting the finger. The new API lets you, as the developer, specify that middle portion, the path taken by an imaginary finger or fingers. Now, why is this important for accessibility? Let's take a look at Switch Access, an accessibility service that does not assume that you can touch the screen. Rather, it lets you use a switch or a set of switches to move highlight across actionable views and select the currently highlighted view. Now, this leaves off some functionality when you don't want to interact with the entire view, but rather a small part of it. The example that I'll be using is Google Maps, specifically the Maps area, which supports complex gestures, things like zooming in and out and panning the visible area. So with this new gesture dispatch API, we can add point scanning to switch access, and that lets us perform these complex gestures. So let's take a look at how we can use one switch to operate Google Maps. We'll start in the Maps app, and you'll notice here I have a switch already connected to my device. I'd like to get walking directions to the 3 buildings just west of here. I don't quite remember what they're called, but fortunately, once we make a selection on the map, we can get directions that way. So here, it seems like I don't see those 3 buildings on the map, so I'll have to pan to get to see them. I'll start point scanning by pressing the switch, and the first thing I'll do now is select where I want to perform that gesture. First the Y coordinate, then the X coordinate, and here I'll choose to swipe right. So now in the lower left, we see the 3 buildings that I'd like to walk to. I'm going to place a pin there by long pressing. So again, I'll start by choosing the location first, starting with the Y coordinate again, and then the X coordinate. And here I'll choose long press from the Actions menu. This gives me a button at the bottom of the screen asking whether I'd like walking directions. As that's exactly what I'll want, I'm going to select that button. So again, I'll choose the location first, and here I'll choose Select. And here we are, directions to the point we just chose from the map using just one switch. I'll hand the mic back to Maya now, who'll tell you about another really cool application of the Gesture Dispatch API.
Thank you, Anna, for the demo. And the next demo is an extremely exciting one for a head tracker using the Dispatch Gesture API by a company called Sesame Enable. Sesame Enable is an Israeli company that was co-founded by 2 people, Oded, who is a computer vision expert, and Giora, who is a high current engineer who became quadriplegic due to spinal cord injury. Now, Sesame Enable utilizes the front camera of the device to track head movements and move a mouse cursor. Now, I'd like to invite Vladi, the head of development from Sesame Enable, onto the stage to demo the technology. Hey, Vladi, how are you doing?
Great.
Ready for this? So the first thing that Vladi will do is he will, can we move to the demo? The first thing that Vladi will do is enable the service. Now, this can be done through voice, but because of the acoustic here, Vladi will just tap on the Sesame Enable notification. Now, the service will calibrate Vladi's face. After it locks it down, Vladi can control a mouse cursor using only his head. Now, if Vladi would like to tap on something, he just dwell. And he can tap. Now, once Vladi is into his email, he can swipe up or down. I think we're a little bit excited. Shaking. It's okay. It's okay. Would you like me to help you? Do you want me to help you?
You can try.
Let's try it out. So the first thing that I'm going to do, and we didn't rehearse it, so I'm going to try to help here. I'm going to calibrate my face. Okay, now I can control the mouse cursor. It's a little bit hard here because the overall stage is shaky. It is hard. Yeah, it's hard to calibrate. The overall stage is shaky and it's hard to do. But this is what this demo is all about. So in general, after we move the mouse cursor, we can also lock the sensor. This is by looking right. Yeah. Yeah, sure, try again. Just go to Candy Crush. Yeah, sorry. So in general, this demo is about how to control a mouse cursor using the device. It's a little bit hard to do it on stage because the whole stage is a little bit shaky. Let's try it. And so the thing is basically you can do everything using a hand tracker on the device, including tapping and touching and swiping, and also downloading any app from the Play Store and basically interacting with that app only using your face. So if you want to try it out in a little bit of a less shaky stage, you are more than welcome to come out to Access and Empathy Sandbox to try it out. And one last note about this API, that while this API is very powerful, it doesn't diminish the need for app developer to make their app accessible, such as adding content labeling or increasing touch target size. Because while the API allows you to interact with different elements on the screen, it doesn't know which element it interacts with. So following Android best practices is still very important. So thank you so much, Vladi, for your help. And with that, I would like to hand it off to Patrick and Scott to talk about voice access.
Is there a clicker? Hey, where's the clicker? Oh, here it is. Grab this. Okay. All righty. Thanks, Maya. I'm Patrick Clary, Product Manager on Accessibility at Google, and with me is Scott Newman, Software Engineer on Accessibility at Google. And we're here very excited to talk to you about a new accessibility service for Android called Voice Access. And this is an accessibility service that is meant for users with a motor impairment that find it hard to use a touchscreen with their hands. But before I want to talk about that, I want to tell you about one of our testers, whose name is Andy. Andy is a 65-year-old male with essential tremor. And for Andy, he really likes to be able to communicate with friends and family and send them pictures through email and messages and updates. And he generally does this at home on his desktop PC, utilizing an app like Dragon Naturally Speaking, which allows him to dictate by voice. However, Andy would really like to be able to do this on the go from his mobile device. But due to his tremor, using a touchscreen is very problematic. Now, if we take a step back here, we realize that Andy's experience is not that unique. In fact, there are millions of people in the US alone that have some form of motor impairment that impacts how they can use a touchscreen. So this can range from people with essential tremor, like Andy, to people who have Parkinson's, amputees, people with arthritis, even people with spinal cord injuries, just to name a few. Now, in addition to that, there's many more people who have what we call a situational disability, like Maya mentioned before. This could be a temporary impairment that affects their use of a touchscreen, something like a broken hand or wrist, or maybe their hands are occupied. A common use case we actually hear is that someone might be cooking, and their hands are dirty, they don't want to use their hands, and they'd love to be able to still control their device. So this is really the motivation we have for voice access. And our goal with voice access is to provide someone this complete control of their device through use of their voice alone. In essence, we want to be able to allow users to click by voice. Or, to put in the words of one of our testers, use your voice and you're able to access the world. So you might be asking, how does an accessibility service like voice access differ from a voice assistant, like Google Now or OK Google, where you can say this hot word and then perform a search query, which is more conversational, or you can perform a voice action, like you can set a reminder, you can create a calendar event. An accessibility service is different. What we're looking for is to empower people to be able to use their device and have full device control. Now, the high-level voice assistant is really lacking the fine-grained commands needed to do this. So for example, I mentioned Jeff likes to send messages to friends and family. So from his mobile device, if he wanted to do this, he might have to open the camera app, take a photo by pressing a button, then open an app like Hangouts by clicking on the icon, scrolling and swiping to the contact he wanted, clicking on Attach the Photo, and then tapping on the text box, typing in text, and then clicking Send. So with voice access, our goal is for each of those touch actions to enable a corresponding voice command that allows users to chain together a series of these commands to perform a complex task. So to see it in real life, I'll hand it over to Scott, who will give you guys a demo.
Thanks a lot, Patrick. So my name is Scott Newman. I'm a software engineer on the accessibility team, and I'm excited to give you a demo of voice access today. Before I go ahead and get started, I just wanted to mention that, as some of you may be aware, speech recognition demos can be fickle in front of live audiences. So if you run into any issues, just bear with me and we'll get through them. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So I remember that Patrick sent me a message a little bit earlier, and I'd like to read it. But before I actually read the message, I'm going to go into accessibility settings and enable large text, so it's a little easier for those people in the back of the room to see what's on the screen. Open Settings. Scroll to the bottom. Tap Accessibility. Tap Large Text. Go Home. Go Home. Let's try one more time. Go Home. All right, there we go. So that's voice access in action. So what actually happened right there? So you may notice that there's this persistent blue button that appears on the top right of the screen. And so that's a voice access activation button. So from any screen, you just press that button, and then voice access starts listening. And then from there, you can issue commands to globally navigate the device, interact with individual elements on the screen, and basically control your device entirely by voice. So what I did there was I opened the Settings app by saying Open Settings. I said scroll to the bottom to actually scroll the screen down as if I were performing a traditional tap gesture. Then I said tap accessibility to tap the corresponding button on the screen that was labeled with the text accessibility. And then I did the exact same thing to press the switch labeled large text. So this actually uses the same accessibility APIs that underlie the other accessibility services that we've seen so far, like TalkBack or Switch Access. So as long as you follow accessibility development best practices, your app should actually work with voice access right out of the box. So with that, let's actually see the message that Patrick sent me. Can we go back to the cast? Thanks. Open Hangouts. Patrick Clary. Stop voice access. Again, so I used voice access to open the Hangouts app. And then when I said Patrick Clary, it actually found the clickable button on the screen with text that was labeled Patrick Clary, and then clicked that button on my behalf. So one other thing that you may be noticing is that there are these numbers that are drawn on the screen whenever voice access is actively listening. And so what that is kind of a safety fallback. So if you want to interact with something on the screen that's clickable or scrollable, and there's no text associated with it, let's say a clickable image, then you can default to just saying the number, and it will click that element on your behalf. So with that, I'm going to respond to Patrick's message and then send it. Type, the party is at 7. I actually noticed that I made a mistake. The party is, I think, at 8 instead of 7, so let me change that really quickly. Replace 7 with 8. So in addition to navigation, interacting with individual elements on the screen, we actually offer a full suite of text editing commands. And so that was just one of very many that you can use to edit text. You can replace parts of text with other text. You can copy. You can move elements around. So just a really fast way to actually interact with whatever's on the current screen. And the Hangouts app actually didn't need to do anything special to work with voice access. It just works right out of the box. So what I'm going to do now is send the message. You'll notice that at the bottom right of the screen is this green send button, and there's no text associated with it. So in order to click that button, I'm going to reactivate voice access, and then I'm going to say the number that's associated with it that appears right next to the button. Then it's going to click that button and send the message. So let's go ahead and do that. Tap 11. Stop voice access. Undo. Stop voice access. So that's voice access for you. So notice that you can start voice access by pressing this blue button. Actually, if you want to do it completely hands-free, if you say the OK Google command, there's actually another way that you can access it completely hands-free by voice. We offer a whole host of activation methods, so you can choose what's most efficient for you. Similarly, you can stop voice access by saying stop voice access, or just by touching the screen, which is kind of a fail-safe option to leave voice access quickly. So that's voice access in practice. Can we go back to the deck, please? Thanks. So let's hear from some actual voice access users about how it's impacted their lives. Roll the video, please.
Let's go, guys. My name's Stephanie, and I just finished my master's in advertising. I'm a C4, C5 split level quadriplegic. I have no feeling from my collarbone down, so it is absolutely vital that I'm able to use my voice. Okay, Google, start voice access.
My name's Jeff, and I have a neurological condition called essential tremor. It is incredibly difficult to use my hands and fingers. It is very easy for me to use my voice. Okay, Google, start voice access.
After using this product for probably about 10 seconds, I think I'm falling in love with it. Open camera. You use your voice and you're able to access the world. Shutter. Share. Hangouts. Astrid Weber. Send.
I cannot tell you how excited I am about this product. Open calendar. New when you don't have the ability to use your fingers and hands. Family movie night. It's really all about voice.
So that's Voice Access. We're really excited for you to try it out. It's in open beta right now. So if you come over to the Access and Empathy Sandbox area, you could try it out yourself. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Astrid and Jin, who are going to talk about how you can use UX research to improve the quality of your product with Voice Access as a case study. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Scott. Hi, my name is Jen, and this is Astrid. We are inclusive design and researchers in Google, and we wanted to share with you today a little bit about how UX research influenced and drove the design of Voice Access. But first, what is UX research? The general definition is that it focuses on understanding user behaviors, needs, motivations through observation techniques, task analysis, and other methodologies. The key here is that while we might think we know what users want because maybe we are users of our own product, or maybe we are really close to it and develop it and design it, it's critical to get out there and get feedback from external users and understand their unique perspectives, insights, challenges, and pain points. In fact, the products that we demoed here today all underwent many iterations of design and development, and all of which were inspired and driven by UX research. The process itself is about a 5-step process, and it can be cyclical if you want to keep refining. The way it was applied to Voice Access, it was first looking at what are the objectives of the product as a whole. One key objective of Voice Access was that they wanted to ensure it was easy to use, easy to learn how to use right out of the box in a hands-free manner. And so from there, they developed hypotheses. Okay, so based on that objective, they thought that contextual help was the best way to allow people to learn how to use the product in the moment. From there, they defined what the best methodologies were to use, conducted the research, synthesized those findings, and reported those back to the team, which further iterated on the design of the product. So now Astrid's going to take you through the specific methodologies used and how those insights actually impacted the design of Voice Access.
Thank you, Jen. I'm Astrid Weber. I'm a UX researcher working on Voice Access, and I'd like to show you how we accompanied the design and development process with a few research methodologies. And I'd like to get started with formative research. Formative research is if you go into the field in order to understand about your users from their daily lives. So you go and see how they work, how they live their lives at home. And we did that in particular with users with severe motor impairments, as you've seen before with the user in our video. What we learned out there is that at the moment, there is no cohesive strategy for people who cannot use their hands in order to access their mobile devices completely hands-free. After we knew that, we went back and developed the first prototype of Voice Access. As soon as we had something that was testable, we did test it. And we did so with internal testing. Internal testing is probably best known to tech companies because all you need is yourself. So all of us within the team installed the application, people outside the team, and we tried to use it in as many circumstances and contexts as possible. what we found was a lot of bugs. So we addressed those bugs, we made the product better, we iterated it, until we got to the point that we felt the product is so stable now that we can actually put it in front of real users. And that's what we did. We ran usability studies. Usability studies are when you invite people to actually come into your lab. Those are people from the core audience, so in our case, people with severe motor impairments, and they test it. And you are in front of them, you can see exactly what they're doing, and they're running through a couple of tasks with you. And you see the limitations of the product, you see where it's failing, but you also see where people are especially delighted. And what you see actually here in the picture is one of our labs. It's designed to be very comfortable and welcoming to our users, and at the same time, it has cameras to capture audio and video. So afterwards, we can actually go back into the data, analyze, and see exactly how we can improve the product. Usability studies are great, but they have their limitations. And I think the biggest limitation is that it's a very short period of time that your user is interacting with the product, and it's in a lab environment, so it's not the real life. So we went one step further and conducted diary studies. Diary studies, as the name already indicates, are studies where your user is going to keep a diary about their usage. So what did we do? We sent voice access home with the users on their personal devices installed, and they could use it in whichever context they wanted to. The only thing they had to do, as they had to promise us, was that they would report back about their experience. So you can do that over the phone, you can have them write emails, or just fill in a quick survey. And in the end of the study, they would come back into the office with us and give us the report, how they used the product, what they liked, what they didn't like. What we learned from that process is that for one, voice access really needs to be polished and be visually delightful. You've seen in the video the latest design that we have. We didn't start off on that. I have a few more examples on that in a minute for you. And the second thing, if you use it on the go, you need a really easy way to activate and deactivate it, because otherwise it's too much hassle for the user to actually dive into the software and then again, when you don't want it to listen, deactivate it. So let me show you these examples that I just mentioned. The first one that I would like to talk about is how we improve the contextual help. You see on the left-hand side the before, and on the right-hand side you see the after. So what is that? On the left-hand side, we see a long list of all the voice commands that we're offering. Everyone who's using or developing on voice-based software knows that the biggest challenge is how can you actually teach your user what they can say, and how can they remember that? So it is essential that we're offering a place where the user can go back and check again what they can say in order to get to a specific result. We thought it makes sense to just offer one long list, everything in one place. People will find their way. When we observed them in usability studies, we found that this is actually not the case. People got lost along the long list. They even forgot what they were looking for because they were so overwhelmed by all the stuff that we offer in there. And also the way we presented the information without any examples was not intuitive to understand for them. So what did we do? If you see on the right-hand side, the first screenshot, we had categories now. So we have basics and navigation, gestures, and text editing. And with those, the users deep dived into a smaller subset of commands, which you see then on the next screenshot within basics and navigation, that the user actually gets specific examples of the voice action that they can take. And by doing so, we actually had much better results that users were able to find what they were saying and also for remembering later on where to find that command again. The second example I'd like to show to you is our tutorial. Again, having a really good tutorial is crucial, especially if people have not used voice interactions before in order to navigate their interface. We wanted to make it as real as possible, so we took a screenshot of the interface and explained it to the users. What we didn't expect was that users would want to interact with this screenshot and wouldn't distinguish between a screenshot versus the real product. So we took that learning back and redesigned the experience, as you see it on the right-hand side, to be text explaining the functionality. So this is how to use the numbers, what Scott had demoed before. And we did have numbers now on the screen, but those are real, so you can interact with them. So the user is learning about it immediately, and they can apply the learning. And with that, we actually made really good progress. And now Jen is going to talk about usability testing and how you can use it for your very own application.
Thanks, Astrid. So in the few minutes remaining, we wanted to leave you with a quick starter guide of how to do your own usability studies, because we do find them very effective. And you don't need anything fancy to actually execute these. Usability testing is really useful to understand how people use your product and why. And that's the key point, is the why. Before you jump in and just bring somebody in and have them run through some tests, you want to have a plan and a strategy. First, starting with, what are the key questions you want to answer with this research? Write these down, review them with your team, make sure everyone is on the same page. These are your research questions. And without solid research questions, the end result might not meet everybody's expectations. So based on these questions, then you'll identify tasks that will help you answer these questions. So for example, if a question was, are users able to onboard without any additional assistance? You would bring in the new user and have them start the app for the first time and maybe run through some of your key fundamental tasks and see if they can do it without asking for assistance from you, looking in the help, or online. Once you're happy with your study and your test questions and tasks, you want to think about who to bring in and actually conduct the study on. Now, you can certainly start with friends and family. Ideally, those people will actually be using your product or do use it. And we also highly recommend having a diverse set of participants as much as possible. And you can actually reach out to various organizations that lobby for accessibility needs, and they're more than willing to accommodate you and get some people to help run their study on. Now, when it comes to actually running it and figuring out where to run this, you don't need a fancy lab like we showed. You can just find a quiet, comfortable space, and you want to make sure that there's room in there for yourself, the participant, obviously. Ideally, you will have somebody to help take notes, and you'll have some video recording equipment, and also it's great to have a developer or a designer, somebody that's very close to the product there to observe as well. And there's been tons of books written on how to actually conduct usability studies effectively. They all kind of boil it down to these 4 key steps: asking the users to perform the test, and then taking a step back and just observing them, seeing what are they actually doing other than completing the task. Are they hovering in interesting spots? Are they using a keyboard? What keyboard shortcuts are they using? And that leads to the next point, which is digging into why. I noticed you were hovering over that button. Can you tell me why? What did you expect to happen? Or after they complete a task, did that meet your expectations? And this is the magic of usability studies, being able to actually understand the rationale and the meaning behind their behaviors. And then I think the most challenging part of this, especially if you are close to the product, is remaining neutral. You might have the urge to want to kind of defend or explain, well, we tried this, but we couldn't do this, so we tried this. This is not the time to do that. You're just there to listen, absorb the feedback, and move on. Oh, and then practice. Definitely practice at least once before bringing in real users. During the study, you want to ensure that you write down the most interesting findings right away. And then review those findings with your team after each participant. This will greatly help at the end, just kind of summarizing your findings. You want to, if you had the ability to actually videotape it, cut small video snippets to help support your findings. Again, not everybody will have been there with you observing the study, so when you're presenting your findings, you can show, look, this is how the users actually interacted with the app. And then one of the most critical pieces is it would be a real shame to do all of this work and have it just sit in a dock somewhere unused. You want to have somebody in charge, ready to drive the process to address these issues. You know, of course, it doesn't have to happen right then and there, but you want to be sure that somebody is taking the charge to prioritize and figure out what are bugs, what are feature requests, and when they will be addressed. So we have on our on the I/O app and our spaces a great link to give you more details on how to conduct usability studies if you're interested. And overall, we hope that you found that this brief overview of the research methodologies used for voice access inspiring, and hopefully you can bring it back to your team. And now back to Patrick.
All right. Thanks, Jen. Thank you, everyone, for attending. So, as you can see, it's very important for us to hear from users with accessibility needs so that we can learn how to improve the platform, and for all of our developers to take into account Android development best practices so we can all make apps that are great for everyone who has different accessibility needs. So, if you'd like to try out voice access, it's in beta now. You can sign up for the beta at g.co/voiceaccess. Also listed on the screen here are some other talks we're doing that are accessibility related. Please attend those. They're all great. Come visit our sandbox. It's Access and Empathy. It's actually right over that way. And you can go there to do a demo of voice access. You can go see the demo of the Sesame head tracking, learn about many more things, and also attend our code lab. So thank you, everyone. Take care.